Real Estate Show with Jenelle and Leslie. I'm Jenelle Cameron.
Hi there, I'm Leslie Pearson.
And today we are going to give you 8 tips that real estate agents secretly think you should know. Hey everybody, welcome back. Hope you had a great week. Thanks for tuning in. And we are here at the end of January. Been a strange month, I'd say.
Real estate wise or life wise?
Oh no, real estate wise.
Well, from my perspective, anecdotally, in my experience, quiet.
Quiet, but then last week, all kinds of stuff sold for over asking.
Right.
So,
and I should say quiet, but the few open houses I've gone to or have been very busy, or the agents I contacted have said their listings are very busy. So that's true.
Busy, but nobody's pulling the trigger.
Yeah, there's no sense of urgency or kind of purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so people going to all these houses, booking all these private appointments, but they're not offering on them.
No. Now, however, there have been some crazy listings that went way over asking this week in East York and a couple of other places. So it is happening. It's starting to move forward. It's just...
What was unique about those, do you think? Why did they go crazy and other ones aren't?
I think the good ones sell quickly.
So good. So
yeah.
Finished,
and low
done.
Low price.
Mm-hmm.
Not even finished or done, because I think there is a market also for people who want something that they have to renovate.
Mm-hmm.
So I do find that is sometimes super successful for a listing as well. Like say, everything else on the street is selling for 1.3. This one's listed for $899.
Mm-hmm.
It sells for $1 million. Blah blah blah.
Right.
So I think we're seeing a lot of that too. So it is interesting. I did go over all of the sales today from way back from 2005 forward. Just because I have charts, I was just kind of looking at the number of sales, number of listings every month, and the month's supply of inventory. And we haven't really changed. I mean, it's a similar kind of situation. December is always really slow. It's almost always every year the amount of listings have doubled by March.
Yeah, there's definitely a pattern to the cycles.
Yes, and it doesn't, even in this strange market,
Yeah.
it seems to
It's
stand.
following that pattern, yeah.
So, yeah, we'll just have to kind of see how it goes, I think. We have a couple of listings ourselves, and they're getting showings. One of them's probably busier than the other, but it's,
Yeah, one is a downtown condo. We've talked about that market. That's probably the market that is kind of at a bit of a standstill.
yeah.
And then the other one is a detached home. And it's very busy, I think.
Very busy, and,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a huge difference, isn't it, between detached and the poor condos?
Yeah. And both should sell and should sell well, but I think probably the house will.
Yeah,
First.
I think so. I mean, I've got people who are waiting to sell their condos, and I'm kind of holding off on pulling the trigger until I know for sure the timing's right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think once we do, it should be good.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on where your condo is. I think in some places the timing is right now for a condo.
Could be.
But downtown, C1, C8 we talk about, I would be holding off a bit, I think. A little bit, maybe?
Maybe a few weeks.
Maybe, just to see.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking, mid-February, end of February.
Yeah, I would do that too. Also, it depends on what price point you're at.
Yeah.
We had one down there that was at a really low price point, and it got an offer in 2 days.
Yeah.
So it's all kinds of factors.
Yeah. But the other one, which is not getting any offers after a certain period of time, also I think it's worth mentioning now that for any of you out there that are in this position, you probably have it overpriced. And we know it's overpriced at this, well, overpriced is not. It needs to be lower if we want to move it.
Yeah. I think it always comes down to
it always
price.
comes down to
price.
price.
At a price, there's a buyer for everything.
There is.
And if something's been on the market for a while, that market has spoken, and it's saying that price isn't right.
Yeah. If you're above the average right now, and the averages change, but if the average days on market is 45 and you're at 85,
Mm-hmm.
Now, interestingly, and this is something that we do as realtors, is we've got, most of us, like a list, a favorites list, favorites. So
Mhm.
I will favorite all the properties that I want to keep an eye on.
Mhm.
And I've noticed how many of those have been selling.
Right.
And
So if they're your favorites, they're the favorites of other people too.
right, but some of these favorites have been on the market, like there were 2 in particular on the market over 80 days, and they sold. And so,
So that hasn't happened in a while. That's a good thing.
yeah, so that's a good thing. And I'm just, as we're sitting here, I see something coming up on my screen about a property I saw the other day, and they've already got 3 offers registered. So they were taking offers tonight, and it wasn't even at a low price point. So there's definitely some of that. The good stuff is definitely going.
Mhm.
So today we thought we would give you our 8 tips to say what we feel is, the secrets that we know that you should know about selling your home. And yeah,
I'm sure that we'll end up with more than 8, and I am also sure that some of these aren't so secret. They're
not secret.
they're tips to make it work.
Yeah,
To be successful.
some of these things are hard for, and it's funny. I had a dinner last night with a friend of mine who's an ex-realtor, and she said she found it really difficult to talk to her clients sometimes about things.
Mhm.
She didn't want to hurt their feelings, or
Yeah.
didn't feel like she was able to be as honest with them as she would like to be, and so maybe some of these fall into that category.
Yeah, that's hard. One of the first things I talk to sellers about is, once you've made the decision to sell, your mindset has to shift.
Yeah.
That it's no longer your house, that you can't have it like laid out the way that you would want to live. It has to be different for selling. That we're going to tell you things that have to do with selling, not to do with living. So you don't be offended. And if you've made the decision to sell, you can't be offended.
Yeah.
We're not saying, your house was, painted a terrible color while you were living here,
Yeah.
but it's not painted the right color for selling.
Yeah.
So those conversations are tough. And knowing they're going to be tough, I always preface them with a, conversation about, okay, you've decided to sell. So let's think of this as property, not your home.
Yeah. And that's exactly it. And that really was our first tip, was don't get emotional.
Don't get emotional. That's right.
Don't get emotional about
It comes down to
the
emotions.
property, but also, good Lord, don't get emotional about the offer.
Yeah.
If people offer you a crappy price, don't get emotional about it. If people are giving you feedback about the home you don't like, don't get emotional.
Yeah.
It's not.
Don't get offended.
Don't get offended.
We're all,
Take emotion
you can't be
out of it.
sensitive to
Yeah.
that feedback.
This is a business transaction.
Yeah,
From this
right.
point forward, you
Right.
need to take emotion out of it.
Yeah, that's right.
And I find that very challenging, certainly with certain clients who, I've got a client right now who doesn't want to know any feedback. I don't want to know. It's too hard to hear. It's too stressful. Okay. But it's, again, these are things we need to understand as we're working together to know whether or not we need to adjust price, whether or not we're on track.
Right. So yeah, what you say is that is another word, a way of putting it that I stated at the beginning, which is that it's a business transaction now. Once you've decided to sell, so there's no room in business dealings for emotion.
No.
And you can't be so sensitive that you're offended.
No.
By anything that happens in the process. You can't be offended by what I might suggest is the value of your house. There's no offense in that. It's numbers.
Right.
It's facts.
And like on that note, if someone has done professional staging in the home, right? Like beyond what you're saying about paint and all that, very true, but professional staging, just, I don't really care if you like it or don't like it. This is not what it's about. This is about what is going to help sell the home. It's not about your personal taste.
Yeah, often you hear from sellers when they come home after the staging's been done is, I don't like that painting, or I didn't like that chair was back in that corner. Well, frankly, who cares?
Yeah, who cares? Yeah.
Unless you're buying the house from yourself, I don't care what you think about it.
I had a client recently, this is just kind of, I digress for a second, but just same kind of thing where I was looking to evaluate her home. I am going to sell it at some point. I bring a stager in. The stager looks around, makes some notes, sends, the notes to me. I forward them to the client, and the client doesn't like the stager. I didn't like her.
Yeah, I've heard that before too.
Who cares?
Mm-hmm.
like she's not selling your home. You're never going to deal
Yeah.
with her. You shouldn't even have been here.
I hear, yeah, they're
when
too
I was
aggressive.
there.
They're too opinionated. Like,
Yeah.
that's why we're having them in.
Yeah, it's like these
Yeah.
things again, like totally an emotional response, not rational at
Mm-hmm.
all. And you know, I mean, our job as realtors is to kind of pat on the back, and it's okay. And
Well, and it's for
just
that reason, because that often happens with stagers, that we bring them in and we have, you know, if the seller happens to be there or if they're just reading the report after the walkthrough,
yeah,
that it's coming from the stager, not us. Because you don't, even though we know it's ridiculous to paint us with a negative brush because of staging,
they do.
emotion can just run wild. And so it's important that professional assessment comes from that person who has a specialty in that. I mean, we can stage for sure, but it's always easier or removes that level of emotion if it comes from someone else.
You're right.
So
I had a client one time cry with a stager came and she gave an assessment of what should be done, and as she was going through, my client was getting more and more
You can see it, yeah.
and then started to wail.
See,
like,
I
literally
don't, I see it and I don't get it.
Yeah, that was weird.
You know, design for living is different than design for selling.
Does
Is
not
that
mean
not
we
so
don't like
obvious?
your furniture.
Yeah, so
I don't know.
So I don't know how you can be offended by that, but emotion is a big part of this game, and what we're saying is get rid of it. Leave it at the door.
Leave it at the door.
You know.
Okay, second tip, actually this was more for buyers and sellers, but I thought this was important. You are never going to get 100% of the things on your list for the money you want. It's just, and even for the money, regardless of the money. Like I've shown properties to people who have boatloads of money, like way more money than people should ever have.
So you're never going to get all that you want in a purchase at any price point.
No. And if you're looking for 100% checklist, I mean, I guess this goes for relationships. It's the same thing. Nobody or nothing is going to match everything 100%. It just doesn't happen.
The only thing is to buy a plot of land and build your own.
And even then, I guarantee you miss something.
Yeah, I always ask people that do a big gut or else build new, you know, having done it now, is there anything you'd do differently? And there's always something.
Always.
So, you know, even if you go that route, you're not going to get 100% of what you want.
That's right.
So the number I hear thrown around is around 80 to 85%.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
You know, you've got a checklist of things. We all do when we buy something. Hopefully you've got a couple non-negotiables, but those should not be an arm length long. Those should be 2 or 3.
Yeah, I always ask clients, like, what is your must-have list and your would-like-to-have list?
Yeah.
And let's concentrate on the must-haves in choosing the properties that we even go to look at.
Yeah.
The would-like-to-haves, that's like, it's the difference between wanting something and needing something.
And I might say, how many times has it happened to you where they end up choosing something that has nothing on the list? Like, that's happened. That's even happened to me. I remember one time looking for a house for like a year at Yonge and Eglinton, and I looked and looked and looked and looked, and I just couldn't find anything. Yeah, and ended up buying a condo on the beach. Like it was like there was nothing. A 1-bedroom condo as opposed to a 3-bedroom home. Nothing was on.
And as an agent, sometimes after you start to take people out a bit, you get you get a tingly sense of what they might actually be looking for. And so I know a couple times I've suggested, I know this is nothing at all like what we've talked about, but let's go see this.
Yeah.
It's just because you get a sense from how they're reacting to things that maybe their list is not true.
That's true.
Maybe it's what they either innocently and naively what they think they want, or maybe it's keeping up with the Joneses thing.
Yeah, that's what they heard they should get.
Exactly.
Their dad told them you need to make sure you have a 4th bedroom and a closet in every bedroom.
Right.
And
so once you get a sense that something like that is going on, if you can just, one day, let's get out of our comfort zone and go see this. And then all of a sudden it's a aha moment.
Right.
That falls under the not getting everything you want. And, you say that this is a buyer's tip, but also you could kind of slant it a bit for the selling side. When you're receiving an offer, especially in the market that we've had recently where you're not getting more than one offer and they're not crazy, put up a sign and things go over asking, there's going to have to be likelihood of some negotiation, and you might not get the ideal closing date. You might
That's right.
you might have to leave that TV over the mantle.
You're gonna have to compromise.
Yeah. So I don't
Buyers
think.
and sellers.
Yeah, I think both. But sellers probably not as much, but because they don't have this list of must-haves and would need to haves, but they do have in their mind what they're going to get, and they kind of need to realize they may not get everything.
Yeah. And on top of that, I had one that's kind of for buyers and sellers, but kind of along the same lines, is that your expectations are too high, period. Like if you're a buyer, your expectations are too high, what you can get.
Yeah.
If you're a seller, they're probably too high.
Yeah.
Right now in this market, everyone's expectations are too high.
Yeah. Sellers are thinking of the past, and buyers are thinking of I think the current, but more to the future.
We live in the present.
Yeah, right. That's
Yeah.
true.
Okay, the next one, and this is seems obvious, and yet it is not.
Okay.
If your house is dirty, and I don't mean like disgusting, but I mean like you're just not a cleanly person, or it smells bad for whatever reason. You smoke weed, especially. You cook food that smells. People don't want your house. Period. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, if your agent hasn't told you this should not be a secret.
But I hear from people all the time, well, what's the big deal? Like, I can't imagine someone really cares that much about whether my bathroom's clean, or I can't imagine people really care that I cooked like a really heavy onion dinner last night. Well, it has an effect that the moment someone steps in your front door and they look and get that first impression of smell and sight, it is huge. Same thing with keeping lights on. People don't want to keep lights on for electricity. You should keep the lights on. It is a proven fact that when people walk into a bright home, they are more interested in the home.
Yeah. I think the issue of cleanliness and smell that you mentioned might be due to the fact that, at least I think I do, I correlate an untidy house, a smelly house, with a general approach to upkeep and maintenance of the house. So if they allow the house to be this dirty, what else is wrong?
Yeah.
It automatically puts that thought in your brain, where it wouldn't be if it were a clean or a smell-free zone.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I think those old-fashioned tricks like baking cookies or having, fake kind of scents in the house, I don't think those work.
They don't.
I think you just want fresh.
Just fresh and clean.
Yeah. So open the windows before
Yeah.
an open house. Open the windows. It's just fresh. It's like those fake, chemical cleanliness and baking or incense burning. Like, really?
Yeah.
Those days are done.
Yeah. It's true. Yeah, that's it. That's a staging and design trick from 1990.
Yeah.
Okay.
But no, a house has to be clean. And it's a particular pet peeve of mine that even when you clean your house and you think you're doing everything by the book, one thing that I see often overlooked is those windows.
Yes.
I'm a huge window person.
Yes.
And if your house is clean but your windows aren't, where else have you short shrift this house?
Yeah.
It goes right to the psychology of your approach to a house. But for me, it's windows. I know for other people it's other things. It's the bathroom.
Yeah.
It's counter clutter. But for me, it's windows.
Yeah.
I look to windows as a guide.
We all don't live the same, right? Like
Yeah.
we have different standards of cleanliness for sure. So hire a professional. Okay. Also does not mean, by the way, it has to be perfect, because we just talked about this. Like, sometimes we bring cleaners in and our clients have unrealistic expectations of how clean it should be, and they see things that we don't see.
Yeah, so I should say that although we both agree that it's important, I'm kind of the view that nobody's going to not buy a house because it's not as clean as they would keep their house. But it does.
But if it's dirty.
But if it's dirty, that's different.
That's a different. Yeah.
And it does factor into how they think about the house. So it might have something to do with how quickly they act on it or how much they're willing to offer. So it might not result in people walking away necessarily, but it will affect your success for sure.
And I have definitely had people walk out of a home because they don't like how it smells many times.
Yeah.
It's whatever the issue is. Sometimes it's pets. Sometimes
a lot of time it is the cooking, and so why can't you hold off on the spicy cooking for days before you go to market?
Or go to your friends.
Yeah. Sometimes it's sometimes smells are a giveaway about the condition of a house. So like a kind of a musty smell in the basement, for example, hard to get rid of, and reveal a lot about the condition of a house.
That's right.
But
and if you smell like fake scent on top of that, then you assume you're covering it up, which is even
So we're not talking about cleanliness. We're not talking about masking or hiding things. We're talking about just presenting your property that's for sale in the best possible light. Like, wouldn't you have a shower before you went out for a date?
Some people know they would. There are definitely people that would not.
Okay, same thing.
Yeah, I could. Anyway, well, we'll stop there. But yeah, even cleaning your appliances, just giving them a once over. Right? People do look inside, and they look in the cupboards, and they look in your cutlery drawer.
Yeah.
And if there's food in there, it's not good.
Yeah.
Okay, next one. This is a tip that's I think important and people don't know is don't design based on what the trends are today.
Yeah.
Because what's trendy today is likely not going to be.
Yeah, aren't we seeing that? Yeah, we're seeing that in stain on floors, to color choices on walls, to backsplashes, kitchen colors, like open concept versus not.
Yeah.
Some trends are very short-lived.
Yeah.
And especially if you're making structural changes, you don't want to be knocking down walls, for overly knocking down walls.
Yes.
If that's the current trend, because trust me, and COVID showed this, that open concept won't always be the trend.
Right.
And you don't want to do anything, make any choices to limit your success.
Yeah, and it's important to stay neutral. I think in everything that you do, in design, in everything in the house, color, everything should be neutral.
I remember my sister redoing her bathroom, one of her bathrooms upstairs, and she went with the shower head, the faucets in the shower, the faucets in the sink, and I think the handle on the toilet, all being Winnie the Pooh.
Oh no.
And I'm like, get a Winnie the Pooh toothbrush holder. What the is right? So like 5 years later, when you don't have kids that are into Winnie the Pooh, you're stuck with all this. You could have had a toothbrush holder that had Winnie the Pooh on it.
Good Lord.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's pretty extreme, I guess. But I know black is really in right now. But, maybe it won't be forever.
Yeah, absolutely.
But as long
black
as it's,
windows, that's another one. That's a big trend that, we've had for a while. And I really like black windows.
I love black.
I don't know how long that's going to last, and I don't think for the $30,000 it would cost me to replace my windows, I wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
I don't trust it would be around long enough.
And black kitchens are really in right now, and I think maybe for living, if you paint your walls black, because that can be easily changed out, maybe live a little.
Yeah.
But know that when we come knocking on your door to sell your house, we're going to say get rid of that black.
Yeah, that's right.
And don't make any permanent changes in that kitchen that are black. That are going to be expensive for you to change out.
That's right.
Because we're going to want to.
Exactly. Yeah. And it'll be to your benefit if we do.
I like blackened kitchens though too, but I always have. Yeah. But it's not.
I know.
Not great for selling. I don't think.
Not. No.
Mm-hmm. So avoid the trends.
Yeah, avoid the trends. And here's another one that I want to say, and this is interesting because I've had this come up a few times with clients. They spend too much on the renovation, and so they don't just buy a regular, stove. They go out and buy the most expensive stove they can because for whatever reason, I think some people just feel like they need to buy the most expensive, but I also feel like people think it's going to be better. Or, not just buying a basic quartz countertop, but they buy like the most expensive imported marble that's 19 times the price. And then, of course, it comes time to sell the house, and they don't understand why people aren't appreciative of the amount of work that they've done. Now, this doesn't count for like a bridal path home. I'm talking about your average, average Toronto home.
So two things come to mind when you talk about this, and one is people aren't going to all have the same taste as you, and people aren't all going to love what you've done. So when you sell, you're going to want to appeal to the most people possible.
Mhm.
So doing anything that would restrict that target audience
Mhm.
is a selling mistake.
Yeah.
And the second issue that comment or this tip raises for me is the number of times we hear, well, but it cost me X, so
Yeah.
I have to
Mhm.
list the price at Y. And people aren't going to pay for over renovations, as you say,
Yeah.
and they're not going to pay for your taste
Yeah.
just because you chose to do it.
Mhm. If you decide you want to put in a $5,000 kitchen sink,
Yeah.
that's up to you, but don't expect to get that money back because the
Yeah.
average sink is $500.
Yeah.
So that's what people.
Oh, I
will
had this
pay.
conversation with my aunt about a kitchen faucet. Like, great, if you're going to live here 10 years and that faucet is going to change your life, go for it.
Yeah.
But it's not, a faucet in the kitchen is not going to change most people's lives. So
No.
don't expect that when we go to sell it in 10
Yeah.
years. But by all means, knock yourself out for
Yeah.
10 years with your great faucet.
Appliances I've had with people say this about laundry appliances, but these are the most expensive laundry appliances, and those alone are worth X. I'm like, I
Right.
don't think
It's
anyone cares
irrelevant.
about laundry.
Yeah.
Not
And
that
when
I
we
care.
set the asking price of your home, when we look at your home's value, one thing we definitely do not consider is what it cost you to have it look this way.
Yeah.
It's irrelevant.
Yeah. We're sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry you spent too much.
Yeah.
And this really, really, really goes for people who are buying and flipping. I
Yeah.
mean, I worked with these guys this one time who spent so much money on their renovation
Yeah.
that, of course, they never got anywhere close to that back.
Yeah.
And they were so offended that people didn't appreciate their
Yeah,
taste.
I've had that client as well.
Yeah.
My one of my favorite clients is chronically over renovating,
Yeah.
and
Still does it though.
still does it, and feels she just couldn't live with herself if she didn't.
Yeah.
So that's not that. There's that emotion.
Yeah.
That's not a
Yeah,
business
that's right.
decision. Yeah,
Yeah.
I see this a lot too when people are either building out or renovating, like a rental, like a basement.
Yeah.
Like basements in selling. Like to spend your money, don't do it in the basement.
Don't do it in the basement.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's a basement. At the end of the day, it's a basement.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's those HGTV shows that talk about how much money you should spend on a basement
Yeah.
apartment. No.
No, I agree.
Okay, here's the next one, and this is hard to hear for most people, but for 99% of you, your house is not worth as much as you think it is.
Yeah, it's
Sorry.
I actually fall into the opposite category. I always undervalue my own properties, but
Yeah.
most people, like
Yeah.
other than me, I think entire population of Ontario thinks more of the value of the house
Yeah.
than the market shows.
Yeah, I've been guilty of this many times, and even when you know better, you don't. And if you insist on pricing it for that price, it's a lose-lose situation. Right? You should never overprice a house. But just hear us when we say it's not worth as much as you think it's worth, and just keep that in mind when you're listing.
Yeah, I mean, and all the other topics we've talked about factor into why a person feels that way, because they're being overtaken by their emotion, not the market facts that we present to them, that what they've spent on the property in the time they've owned it, what they think they have to get out of it to make their next purchase.
And they love it.
Yeah,
just love
so
it.
all those factors play into why a seller feels their home is of more value than it is. And it's hard to hear, but every one of those factors is 100% irrelevant.
Yeah.
And I don't want to hear it anymore.
Yeah. Me either.
I mean, we've been and maybe are stuck with listings that are priced higher than the market shows they're worth. So if you're serious about selling, that's not the way to do it.
No. No. And just because, this kind of goes into the next one, which was the last one I had on my list, but you have to trust the professionals, and that goes along with the pricing conversation that we just talked about. But let me assure you that we know more than you do. I know you think that you know more because you study the market and you read the news and whatever, but we actually do know more.
We know more than your Uncle George as well.
We know more than your Uncle George. We know more than your friend's sister's boyfriend's brother who sells real estate in Sault Ste. Marie. We know more than that because we, and I mean we, the collective we as Toronto realtors, work in the trenches, and we are here and we are in it. And if you've taken the time to hire someone who's a professional who does this full time, they know more than you do.
The other thing I would maybe a little bit counter to that is that, speaking of the general we as in realtors in the GTA.
Yeah.
But additionally, I would say you and I know better
We know
than
everything.
that agent that is going to tell you what you want to hear just to get your business.
And there's a lot of that as well. And
so
that's hard.
if Joe
it's hard to know the difference.
Yeah, Joe from ABC Realty overinflates your home's value and you get excited about that, again, emotion coming into your head, then you're going to list with that Joe from ABC and your house is not going to sell.
That's right.
So, agents out there will, exaggerate your home's value just to get your business. Now, as you say, it's very hard to know when someone is, doing that.
And that was me last year. I went to this woman's house. She talked to 3 realtors. I gave the highest. I never do. I gave the highest assessment.
But I'm sure you had information behind you.
I did. I was so far off from these other 2 agents that I thought, am I losing my mind?
So maybe it can innocently happen. I think most often that overinflation does not happen innocently.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
And people, realtors, and let's be fair, realtors right now, it's desperate times for a lot of them. And they will say anything to get business because, there's just like the market is hurting. There's a lot of realtors that have had a hard year.
So it's hard to tell if you're sitting across the table from an agent who is just saying what you want to hear to get your business. But I mean, you've just got to say, show me the facts. What do you know about this market? What have you done around here? What have you done for me lately?
Yeah.
And what are the market facts on which you come to that? And that's where you find out that person is just fluffing because they won't have them.
Yeah, and back to point number 1, don't get emotional.
Yeah, they won't have them.
Because all of that, if you're rational and reasonable in your approach to all of this, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've got to rely on the experience and education of the realtor that you're interviewing, and I think the number one thing is that trust, and you have to have someone you can talk to and feel that you can establish a rapport with, and often I'll say just go with your gut.
Yeah.
Forget everything else. Just go with your gut. You think we can work together? Okay. Let's do it.
It's you can't overstate that.
You just don't want to be 2 months later at this high asking price sitting stale on the market. That's the worst thing to happen.
Yeah.
Worst thing to happen.
Yeah. All right. I think that's all we had. Those were our 8 secret, not so secret tips, as talking about the things that we know and that you should know but probably don't know, and may be hard for some of us to tell you. So we've said it now, and hopefully they're helpful.
Yeah.
All right, everyone, thanks so much. We appreciate you tuning in as always. Please do us a favor, if you don't mind. Make sure you rate this podcast on Apple, Spotify, wherever you are listening. That would be great. If you are following it on YouTube and watching the video version, we'll take a like and a comment there too. And don't forget to follow us on all of our social channels at the Jenelle Cameron Team, where we provide all kinds of tips for you on a daily basis.
Sounds good. I will.
All right. Yeah, well, thanks. Me too. Okay, everyone, have a great week and happy real estate.
Happy real estate, everyone.
All right. Perfect.
Good.
So we can just do one more.